Welcome to the week ahead here on the SABC News Channel. We are live with you on this Sunday afternoon from the IEC Results Operations Centre at Gallagher Estate in Midrand in Gauteng. You can interact with us on social media platforms. It's at Week Ahead and our hashtag is The Week Ahead. I'm Gustav Freiling. Good afternoon and thank you very much for joining us here today. Now, Senegalese diplomat Professor Abdoulaye Bathily says Africa needs to break colonial ties in a number of aspects to liberate its people. He delivered the 14th Thabo Mbeki Africa Day lecture in Midrand, north of Johannesburg. The day is used to take stock on the challenges confronting the continent.
Today, the continent is faced with another scourge. The military build-up on the continent. The military build-up under the pretext of fighting against violent extremism, terrorism. When you look at the map of Africa today, and you look at the level, the extent of foreign military presence on the continent, as a historian, I cannot but remind me of what has happened at the end of the 19th century, the period of conquest and colonization. There are more military presence on the foreign military presence on the continent today than even in the 19th century at the time of the colonial conquest and colonization.
How long have you been operating here? How is it going?
This is really worrisome. So the scramble, the new scramble for Africa is today a threat, continued threat for the development of the continent. It's a continued risk for the stability of the continent, a continued risk for the unity of the continent.
Geopolitical conflicts are raising concerns for major insurers, especially at sea. This as they need to consider increasing the so-called risk premium for cover in certain regions. The shipping industry has been feeling the effects of tensions in and around the Red Sea, with major shipping carriers having to make Plan B to avoid danger. This comes as Yemeni Houthis seek to attack vessels in the area that they deem to be in support of Israel and its campaign in Gaza. This is one of the issues covered in Insurer Alliance's Safety and Shipping Review for 2024.
Shipping in the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden area continues, but has seen a major decline given the ongoing threat of attack from Yemen's Houthis. The Houthis started launching attacks against vessels they felt were associated with or sympathetic to Israel's cause in Gaza late last year. Shippers have had to resort to using alternative routes, but this means a longer and more costly voyage.
We've had over 100 ships that have been targeted by the Houthi militants. And I think where we're particularly concerned is regarding the sophistication of these attacks, particularly with the use of drones, as well as very advanced weaponry. So it really is showing us how vulnerable shipping can be to these geopolitical conflicts that seem to take place more and more these days.
Efforts to avoid the Red Sea and the Suez Canal have cost the shipping industry an untold amount as they've had to extend their voyages, with freight rates for those voyages rising as a result.
The obvious alternative is coming via the Cape of Good Hope. It's very difficult to determine actual cost because there's obviously so many different aspects that will impact that, but you're typically dealing with an additional 3,000 nautical miles that these vessels now need to transit when they go via Cape of Good Hope, which roughly translates to about an additional 10 days of sailing time. So figures are very difficult to determine. We have heard some figures of an additional $1 million per voyage that's extended via Cape of Good Hope.
Ultimately, longer drawn-out voyages, particularly for goods containers, means delays against planned delivery times and a higher cost for them to be delivered to their destination. Higher shipping costs will ultimately result in high prices for the end consumer. And in instances of conflict, the propensity for insurance premiums to rise also increases.
Risks associated with war are then usually covered under a separate policy. So I'm not an underwriter, so I won't be able to go into a lot of technical detail, but typically ship owners would take out an additional insurance, which would then cover them for their vessels that are transiting through these high-risk zones.
Another issue the shipping industry is trying to grapple with is its need to curb its global carbon footprint. Industry-wide initiatives are at play to try and achieve a 40% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2030, with the hope of being carbon neutral by 2050, although they're highly ambitious goals. But it's important, given that shipping carries 90% of global trade.
As an example, a lot of vessels now are looking to use alternative fuels, those which are a lot more greener. And it's obviously difficult for us to assess that risk when there's not really much history in the context of marine propulsion. So as insurers, we are supporting the sort of experiments that are taking place in the market regarding these alternative fuels. As an example, ammonia. We're also seeing methanol, and we're seeing this coming through in vessel orders. So it is encouraging to see that the market is turning in that regard as they move forward to meeting those goals.
While the sector can never be wholly immune to the dangers of the sea, Alliance Safety Review notes that vessel security and safety in the sector has vastly improved over the years. Nompumelelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, the DA is today holding its final rally ahead of Wednesday's general elections at Willowmore Park Stadium in Benoni, east of Johannesburg. The party is hoping to convince voters with just over 48 hours left to buy into its vision of a transformed South Africa. It's a vision contained in its Rescue South Africa campaign, which commits to creating 2 million new jobs, end load shedding and water shedding, lift 6 million people out of poverty and improve the quality of primary education and healthcare. Now, our reporter Kani Mapanga joins us live from Benoni this afternoon. Kani, bring us up to date on the latest over there in the stadium where you are today.
Well, good afternoon to you, Gustav, and to the viewers at home. A lot of excitement here at the stadium in Benoni as we draw closer and closer to that keynote address by DA leader John Steenhuisen, who will spell out the DA's rescue plan. Remember, they launched this campaign or election campaign a few months before the main polls, and it is designed to address some of the socioeconomic challenges South Africa has been dealing with. Now, we were scheduled to speak about the corruption portion of this rescue plan. Remember, it started quite early with the DA attributing alleged corruption in the country to the governing party. But before we get there, to spell out the DA's position within society from its last electoral gains or losses rather, the DA's electoral fortune slowed down for the first time in the 2019 elections when the party received 20.77% of the vote, which was a decrease from 22.23% votes. That was calculated to be about 470,000 voters that the DA lost in the last polls. So they are emerging from 2019 with a loss, and that loss was the core voters, or conservative voters rather, Gustav, that left the DA for the Freedom Fund Plus. Now, that formation is expected to grow in 2024. However, the DA's campaign has not been centered on these core voters and getting these core voters back to the Democratic Alliance, but rather has centered its campaign on the governing party and its shortcomings since the dawn of democracy. Now, this is where the issue of cadre deployment comes in, which is one of the pillars addressed in the rescue plan, quote unquote, by the DA. You may remember for some time, Gustav, the DA came up with its court challenge against the long-standing policy of the governing party, that is catered deployments. However, they were unsuccessful in the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, and proving that the policy itself was unlawful and invalid, with the court making such a damning finding that corruption is a scourge within society that affects people's lives quite intricately and quite deeply, and is not a tool to be used for political election campaigns. So we were expected to reflect on this with the DA's head of that end-catered deployment campaign, Dr. Leon Schreiber. However, he hasn't made it to the stadium yet. We hope to catch up with him later on whether this campaign or this core focus on the governing party instead of their core voters has in fact enhanced their election campaign or will further harm them when we head to the polls on the 29th of May. Now, I want to give you a few of those visuals ahead of that 2 o'clock address. A lot of activity taking place here behind me at the Willowmore Stadium in Benoni as they await that main address. Now, as we stated earlier, we're looking at a capacity or an accommodation, Gustav, of at least over 10,000 supporters that can fit this venue. As you can see, it's a sea of blue at the venue. Very few empty seats ahead of that 2 o'clock address. We expect the leader, John Steenhuisen, to be on time. He has already arrived, and we expect about a 25-minute speech from him as a final plea to the voters ahead of those very, very crucial 2024 polls. Now, SABC News will be giving you that speech live when he does take to the podium. Over to you in studio, Gustav.
And we expect that speech to be live this afternoon from 2 o'clock, this speech by the leader, John Steenhuisen. Ganima Panga, our SABC News reporter, live there from Benoni in Gauteng at that rally. This is the week ahead on the SABC News channel, and we will be back right after this. Welcome back to the week ahead. Now, as the campaigning period wraps up as per the IEC timetable, our reporter Pimani Baloy is on the ground to speak to residents of Polokwane this afternoon about their expectations ahead of Wednesday's election. Pimani, good afternoon. What are the sentiments of the residents there where you are?
Good afternoon, Gustav, and good afternoon to our viewers. We have been in and around the streets of Polokwane, specifically on Church Street, which is one of the busiest streets in Polokwane, which holds one of the busiest taxi ranks into Polokwane, where a lot of people who enter the city, either who using public transport, either leave from there or they get into the town there. And we've been speaking to people who show that sentiments such as eagerness to go and vote, people speaking about voting for different parties from the spectrum, saying they have been following the campaigns that have been happening in the past 3 months, and saying that some of the things that are mentioned in the campaigning period do resonate with what they wish for the country. It speaks to them regarding service delivery, addressing that, load shedding, and other areas which speak to, unemployment, the creation of jobs, the availability of higher education and other facilities. But right now, Gustav, I'm joined by somebody who will be participating in a South African election for the first time. This is somebody who was born in the African state of Ghana, and he has a dual citizenship in South Africa. He first voted in 2019 in the general elections, then voted again in 2021, Mr. Mohammed. Right now, he'll be participating in his third election and is quite eager to participate. But let me bring him in so that we get his view. Mr. Mohammed, thank you so much for your time. We're in your shop here in the Polokwane CBD. Wednesday, you were telling us that you're very eager to go and mark that X. Why is it so? Take us through your history when you relocated to South Africa, how you came to get your dual citizenship.
So I'm Mohammed Adam. So I'm a citizen of South Africa, born in Ghana. So I'm locating here in Limpopo because I'm happy in Limpopo.
Let's talk about voting on Wednesday. Are you going to vote? If I may ask, who are you going to vote for and why?
No, I'm going to vote because I'm a citizen of South Africa, so I'm happy to vote because I'm a citizen of South Africa.
Without campaigning for the parties, who has your vote from what you heard from the campaigns? Who are you voting for?
Yeah, I'm going to vote for the party I like. It's ANC, so I'm going to vote for ANC.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed Adam. That is Mr. Mohammed Adam Gustav stating that he's very eager to go and vote on Wednesday. We do know that we are currently in his shop where he sells second-hand clothes, and they've seen a stream of people streaming in and out just to come and buy these clothes. We do know that the IEC tomorrow will be starting its special votes, and we do know that in Limpopo alone, just under 160,000 people have registered to participate in that special vote. Some IEC officials will be visiting them in their homes, but others will be going to their registered polling station to cast that vote ahead of Wednesday. So these are some of the sentiments that we're getting from the people in Polokwane. They are eager to go and cast their vote, and they are saying, calling to other South Africans who've also registered to go and make sure that their voice is also heard. Gustav?
Thank you so much for joining us there from Polokwane this afternoon. SABC News reporter Pimani Baloy speaking to the residents in Limpopo. Now, let's turn our attention to stories that made headlines in the Sunday newspapers for today. This is the last Sunday before Wednesday's general election, and we have the Sunday Times, of course, and we can show it to you. The Sunday Times newspaper today, all the papers reporting on yesterday's rallies. The ANC rally, of course, at the FNB Stadium yesterday. Let the people decide is the headline on the front page of the Sunday Times, and a picture of Cyril Ramaphosa speaking there. He pleads with supporters to come out in numbers to defend the gains made since 1994, is what the paper is saying here this morning. Political leaders threw themselves into a last frantic round of appeals to voters yesterday. Another story on the front page of the Sunday Times, Ramaphosa's pro-Palestinian chant gaffe. The president yesterday chanted a slogan many regard as anti-Israel at this gathering of ANC supporters in Johannesburg, the river to the sea chant that he made there. And then also on the front page of the Sunday Times, fascinating story, it's in the newspaper today. Top UK journalist Alec Russell joins Cyril Ramaphosa on the campaign trail. That was also in the Financial Times last week, and it's an interesting story where it takes you through Cyril Ramaphosa's decades in the 80s at trade unions, the 90s as a negotiator, the 2000s as a businessman, and now as the head of state and as a politician these days in South Africa. The other newspaper that we are looking at today is City Press, of course, and here on the front page of City Press you can see the headline Elections 2024 SA on a knife edge. All polls indicate that the ANC will lose its outright majority and will be forced to co-govern the country. That's the headline on the front page of City Press today ahead of Wednesday's election. South Africans' expectations are that the ANC will drop to below 50% support for the first time since 1994, and they are quoting the polls, of course, here. And that's after yesterday's rallies. Also a picture of the rally in the FNB Stadium yesterday. In City Press today also, Helen Zille believes 25% would be huge for the DA if the polls are correct, and the DA can get up to 25%. And also then the shadow of Jacob Zuma is one of the other articles that's in City Press today. A lot of the papers reporting on the polling. The Social Research Foundation polling, it's a daily poll that they do there, and they're saying that the ANC, that the signing of the National Health Insurance Act didn't actually help the ANC that much, and in their poll they saw the ANC dipping after the signing of that act. That is an overview of the Sunday newspapers, Sunday Times and City Press this afternoon. Okay, you're watching The Week Ahead here on the SABC News channel. We are live with you from the IEC's Results Operations Centre in Midrand in Gauteng, and now we are going to go to a break. We'll see you right after this. Welcome back. Political parties in the country have started to wind up their campaigns ahead of Wednesday's general elections. The May 29 vote is said to be the most hotly contested since 1994. The IFP will be holding its rally in Mhlathuze, that's in Richards Bay, in northern KwaZulu-Natal today. The party's president, Nkosini Hlabisa, will address party members and supporters. Now, the IFP, the DA and Action SA are among those that make up the multi-party charter. Our reporter Ayanda Mhlongo is on this story, and she joins us now there live from Richards Bay with the latest.
Have a very good day to you. I was just waiting there for the national anthem to finish marking the start of the IFP's program. They are now hearing the AU anthem. Gustav, maybe let's take a listen and we'll chat in a minute.
Ngiyathokoza kakhulu. Thank you very much. Ngifisa ukusho ukuthi uhlelo ngiliphethe ngibambisene nodadewethu uComrade Julian van der Merwe esizode sishintshanisana naye.
Well, that was a tribute there on for the late President Emeritus of the IFP, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, of course, now following the national anthem and the AU anthem, of course, now marking the start of the Sizo Ngoba rally as the IFP today concludes months of campaigning. Was largely focused here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Arriving, we see the president of the IFP, who of course will be delivering the keynote address at around 1 p.m. Throngs of IFP supporters from across the province have gathered here at the Mhlatuze Sports Complex here in the town of Richards Bay to hear the final message of the party, how the campaign has run so far, and what will be the final message from the IFP president just 2 days before South Africans go to the polls. A very, very important final rally of the IFP. As I said, it concludes a very long and intense campaign for this party that has, of course, set its sights on regaining control of the province of KwaZulu-Natal. IFP, of course, lost control of this province in 2009, and in these, particularly in this election, IFP saying that it has set its sights on controlling the province. It feels that it has run a very strong and a very successful campaign. Also, of course, buoyed by the results coming from the 2021 local government, where it managed to take control of a number of municipalities here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and of course the local government elections that continued. We've seen the IFP's campaign, according to its leaders, being very focused, and particularly certain areas which were not the party's strongholds, but of course the party has also been rather intentional in consolidating its support, particularly here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, but also for the first time this year the party saying that it was important for them to increase its support base beyond the borders of KwaZulu-Natal. We've seen them in the provinces of Mpumalanga, they've been to the northwest, they've been to Gauteng, they've been to the Eastern Cape, and earlier on in our discussions with some of the party leaders, they say that they feel they are going to be able to increase their support base in the other provinces. But of course the main province that the IFP is looking at is the province of KwaZulu-Natal. It's not going to be an easy one for the party. They are up against a fierce ANC, of course, that is not willing to give up its control of the province of KwaZulu-Natal. You also have the EFF that also wants to increase its support here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and now the newly formed Mkondo Wesizwe party, which also has its roots here in this province. The IFP, though, saying it's unfazed by all of that, and they feel that the reception that they've received throughout the campaigns, their interactions with South Africans, the reaction that they've been getting, or the responses rather they've been getting from community members, most especially in this province, is an indication to them that indeed they're going to fare well in this election. Right, the program now, as I was saying, is starting. Let's take you now to the program where currently one of the NEC leaders, Mamgwadlopa Tetra, is speaking.
I've got a short task to perform. I wish to introduce to you Honorable MB Gwala, who is the national chairperson of
You heard the voice of our reporter there, Ayanda Mhlongo, live from Mhlatuze in Richards Bay in the north of KwaZulu-Natal at the IFP's final rally. This is the week ahead on the SABC News channel, and we will be back right after this. Welcome back. India's capital, New Delhi, is voting in the country's general election, which is now inching towards its end. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking a rare third term, but opposition parties have accused him of taking an anti-Muslim stance and polarizing the country. Voters in Delhi are voting to choose members of parliament from either side.
Delhi residents are coming out in sweltering heat to vote. The temperature in most of the capital has breached the 44 degrees Celsius mark. Of the 8 regions going to polls, a heat wave warning has been issued in at least 3. Being outside here can be painful, but still people say they are braving tough conditions to exercise their democratic right. The fight in Delhi, as in much of the country, is between Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party and the India Alliance. Now, this alliance is a coalition of roughly 24 political parties hoping to defeat Mr. Modi against all odds. Critics say Mr. Modi has made several polarizing speeches on the campaign trail. He's allegedly stoked anti-Muslim sentiments in an effort to consolidate his largely Hindu voter base. The opposition parties claim that it's a sign that Mr. Modi is not interested in being a fair prime minister and will change the country's constitution to suppress minority communities and democratic rights. But both sides have refuted the allegations made against each other. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says he's a secular leader and it's the opposition parties that have exploited the country's minorities for votes. Now, India's top poll body has had to issue a warning asking both sides to rein in their rhetoric. Many voters believe the real issues such as unemployment, wealth disparity and farmers' poor income have been sidelined. The opposition parties have promised better jobs and better income to farmers, while the ruling BJP is hoping to rely on its welfare promises along with its Hindu nationalistic agenda to win these elections. Many analysts believe Mr. Modi is on track to securing a historic third term, though the opposition may be poised to perform better than they did in the 2014 and 2019 general elections. Kashan Garg, SABC News, New Delhi.
Now back home, various political parties wrapped up their election campaigns across the country with a few days remaining before the polls.
Rise Mzansi leader Songezo Zibi was on a campaign trail in his hometown in Mqanduli in the Eastern Cape. He called for young leadership with a plan to combat lack of service delivery, skills and economic development, infrastructure challenges, access to healthcare facilities, skills development and fighting gender-based violence abuse are some of the priorities of Rise Mzansi.
The message throughout the country, but also here in Mqanduli where I come from, is that it is time for new leaders. It is time for younger leaders, fresh leaders who are clean, not tainted by corruption, who are really committed to doing the work of the South African people. But those leaders must also have a plan. Some of the issues here in Mqanduli, in particular the surrounding villages where I am from, but also if you go down towards Coffee Bay, towards Hole in the Wall and so on, water is a big issue. And that's one of the reasons we feel we need to invest in water infrastructure, in road infrastructure.
In Mpumalanga, party members from Better Residents Association and African People's Convention came together as one. For these residents, the APC and BRA merger has come at the right time. They believe they will see change in their area after the elections.
I want to see change, better service delivery, roads, water, because more especially here in Ward 15 we're suffering from water. So it will be much better if our people can get clean water than to drink water with cows and goats.
So we're very much concerned that the APC, when it takes over the government, are going to bring about change to the people.
In the Free State, African Content Movement leader Saudi Motsoeneng, who took his last-minute election campaign to Mangaung, accused some ANC top leaders who hail from Botshabelo to have deserted the area. Motsoeneng says leaders have failed to improve the lives of people who don't have decent jobs. This is the first time that Motsoeneng campaigned outside Maluti Phofung municipality in the Eastern Free State.
They have come in numbers, which means they are ready to put their eggs under the ACM. I'm hopeful that this time the Free State is in our hands. I'm hopeful all people of South Africa, they are going to vote ACM.
MK Party says it is confident of obtaining a 2/3 majority victory in the upcoming elections. The party held its last provincial rally in Hammersdale, west of Durban. Its leadership reiterated that the Constitutional Court decision to bar their leader Jacob Zuma from holding public office hasn't steered them off course.
This is the week ahead on the SABC News Channel, live from Midrand here at the IEC's Results Operations Centre. We will see you right after this break. Welcome back. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa made a final pitch to voters to return his party to government, addressing a packed FNB stadium yesterday. Ramaphosa said the governing party has a plan to grow the economy, create jobs, expand services and better the lives of all South Africans. Now, the governing party is seeking another mandate after having been the only party to have been in government since the dawn of democracy. The ANC is facing one of the most difficult elections yet.
It was the governing party's final push, and it flexed its muscles. Tens of thousands packed the 94,000 capacity stadium, perhaps to remind all and sundry that the party still enjoys popular support. These are, after all, the most contested elections since the dawn of democracy. The party is arguably facing its biggest challenge. Never before has it ever witnessed its former president lead a party to unseat it from power. Former President Jacob Zuma is leading the rival MK party, threatening the majority of the ANC. Touting its track record, the party says it's unfazed and has a plan to do even better.
We will implement a jobs plan to put more South Africans to work. We will build our industries and invest in an inclusive economy. We will tackle the high cost of living. We will invest in our people and provide services that our people need.
In an effort to fight unemployment and poverty, party president detailed an economic plan to tackle these. He says people will be at the center of a new ANC government. He also promised to roll out the Gauteng's Nasisipane project, spearheaded by Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi, to other provinces. This scheme has seen thousands of young people being absorbed into job opportunities, but it has not been without criticism.
We are also going to spend quite a lot of money, billions, training people to get skills that can be best used in our economy, because our objective is to create quality jobs. And in order to do so, we want to build industries. We want to localize so that more and more products are made here in South Africa.
Ramaphosa also spoke of the importance of universal health following his signing of the National Health Insurance. He also placed education at the center of economic revival. Local government, which is at the coalface of service delivery, will be attended to as well. Most complaints come from slow or no service delivery by local government.
We are going to intervene because we will not allow our people to continue suffering as a result of municipalities that are not going to perform. This we are going to do.
The ANC president also promised to press ahead with the renewal agenda of the party, saying those who cannot stand it are leaving the party. In a matter of days, South Africans will head to the polls to make their choice and decide who should govern them for the next 5 years. A task shouldered by every South African. Mzwandile Mbeji, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, now the DA is today holding its final rally ahead of Wednesday's general elections. It's at the Willowmore Park Stadium, and that is in Benoni, east of Johannesburg. The party is hoping to convince voters there with just over 48 hours left to buy into its vision of a transformed South Africa, and that's a vision contained in its Rescue South Africa campaign, which commits to creating 2 million new jobs, end load shedding, end water shedding, lift 6 million people out of poverty, and also improve the quality of primary education and healthcare. Right, our reporter Kani Mapanga joins us now live from the stadium there in Benoni. Kani, what is the latest that you have for us?
Well, good afternoon to you, Gustav, and to the viewers at home. I want to continue where we left off when we were discussing the corruption pillar in the DA's rescue plan for South Africa. You may remember, as I stated earlier, the DA has chosen to focus largely on the governing party and its shortcomings in its campaign. I'm joined by Dr. Leon Schreiber now to discuss this cadre deployment or end cadre deployment campaign, its losses, and whether it can actually have a positive or adverse impact on the DA's campaign ahead of the May polls. Now, Leon, you started this campaign quite a while ago, launching it in the courts, eventually getting to the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, which decided that corruption is a serious issue in our country and shouldn't be used as a political tool to advance political campaigns. I think that was the last paragraph there in the judgment that you saw from the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria. So you weren't successful in ending cadre deployment. Some may argue that this campaign of the DA was all over the place and focused with the wrong group by targeting the governing party. As you've seen where you are now leading up to the May polls, was this campaign in vain? Was it worth it?
Well, absolutely. We need political change if we're going to end cadre deployment, because the one thing that we've seen throughout the 5 years and more that we've been working on this is that there's absolutely no political will to combat cadre deployment and corruption. So all of the steps that we've taken over these years, including the successful court cases to expose the National Cadre Deployment Committee's records, as well as our recent work on actually doing the same at provincial and regional level, has really sensitized South Africans about the systemic causes behind corruption and state capture. And I think it's important to remember also what the Zondo Commission told us. In their words, cadre deployment is a system that facilitates state capture and corruption and service delivery failure. So at the end of the day, the ANC in government has had ample opportunity through the Zondo Commission, through the court cases, and through things like our end cadre deployment bill in Parliament to signal whether it is willing to actually start addressing the root of the problem. They failed to do so, and of course now we go to the electorate and ask them on Wednesday and in the days leading up to that to actually force change in South Africa, force us to move away from cadre deployment and failed service delivery and corruption. That's why ending cadre deployment, and not only ending it, but replacing it with a new system that will be based on merit-based appointments, and where the Public Service Commission becomes an independent oversight body for appointments. That's the way to go. And if South Africans want that, if they want an end to cadre deployment and corruption, the ANC has made it clear they're not going to give it to us. We as the people will have to force change by voting for the DA.
But essentially we're 2 days away from the polls, and you have failed to link this long-standing practice of the governing party to the corruption or alleged corruption that has plagued this country.
Absolutely not. What we've been doing for years now, especially as we've intensified it in recent years, has been to do exactly that, to sensitize, as I say, to inform South Africans from the opposition benches about the fact that corruption is not something that happens by accident. And I think that's really the fundamental point as we go into the voting booths. If we had a couple of institutions that were failing, but most were functioning well, we could have said this is a limited or isolated problem. But it's not. We have systemic corruption across the board. board. And when you have that, it's no good to just treat the symptoms. It's no good to focus on the post office or Eskom or Transnet. You have to understand what's causing the disease, what's causing the systemic decline. And our message has been very clear, not only throughout this campaign, but for years now, that it's not political. If you want to address service delivery, you have to build a capable state that's not captured by any political party. And that's the message that we're sending to voters now. They have the power to end cadre deployment and corruption. They have the power to fix the state and service delivery. And we are very confident that on Wednesday, that's exactly what we're going to see.
Just lastly, very quickly, the DA's campaign of Rescue South Africa has been criticized and welcomed at some part, but criticized mostly because it almost forgets your core voters that you lost in 2019 and focuses largely on the governing party and the masses of those voters. Is that not a demographic or a group rather that you're trying to gain back? And why not look at those new formations that form a threat to those core voters that you're trying to get back? Why go to a completely different area, which you may not be successful in, and then ignore the core voters that you had in the first place?
Well, I don't think we've been ignoring anyone, and I would disagree. I think our campaign, Rescue South Africa, focuses on the country. It focuses on the issues that are affecting the people. And I think if you want to confirm that, you should look at the issues that we've been campaigning on. Cadre deployment, of course, one of them, but you'll also see not only in our manifesto, but through our other issue-driving work, the DA has been the only party that's really been pushing for zero rating of basic food items because of the cost of living issue. We're the only party that's really pushing hard on job creation and having costed plans in place to actually free up the private sector. So I think if you look at the issues that we've been addressing throughout this campaign, it's not about, and I agree with you, it shouldn't be thinking about this as, you know, going after this group or that group. You should focus on the country's problems, because I think that's where all South Africans find common ground. That's where people are united in the problems they face, and that's why we believe we're going to have a great result across the board, because we're the only party focusing on the issues that matter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leon Schreiber of the DA there, sticking by its rescue plan or Rescue South Africa campaign, saying that this is the campaign that speaks to South Africans at large ahead of those polls. Now we expect the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, to take the stand, or the podium rather, at 2 p.m. to deliver that final message to voters ahead of the polls. Over to you, Gustav.
Joining us here this afternoon from the DA's final rally, that's SABC News reporter Kani Mapanga, live from Benoni in Gauteng. Right. Now, as the country prepares for the upcoming elections, we are joined today by the former IEC chairperson and the executive chairman of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa, and that is Terry Tselane, to discuss the state of election readiness, the process of spoilt ballots and the security measures in place to ensure a free and fair election. Mr. Tselane, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. Also, thank you so much for joining us today on SABC2. Our viewers joining us this afternoon on this Sunday, live from the IEC's Results Operations Centre. It's in Midrand in Gauteng at Gallagher Estate. And we're speaking this afternoon to the former chair of the IEC, Mr. Terry Tselane. Good afternoon to you. Okay. It seems as though we do not have him on the line right now, and we're going to speak to him as soon as we can. And we're going to speak to the former chairperson of the IEC about all these issues in the elections, all these issues around spoilt ballots, specifically how it's handled, what happens then when a ballot is spoilt. And that's the questions that we want to ask him about, how the process works, what happens to all of those ballots, and all the security measures in terms of the election. But we'll speak to him as soon as we can, and as soon as we can get hold of him and speak to the former IEC chairperson. Now, in the meantime, EFF President Julius Malema says the youth will determine the future of the country. party. Malema made an impassioned plea to the millions of young people in the country to go and cast their votes on Wednesday. According to the IEC, 77% of young people under the age of 29 entered the voters' roll for the first time in this year's general elections. Malema addressed thousands of supporters at a packed Peter Mokaba Stadium for the party's final rally yesterday.
His last pitch to voters. The EFF leader told the electorate that it's up to them to decide on whether they want an EFF government that will deliver millions of jobs, end load shedding, end student debt, and increase grants, amongst other commitments. Young people lament the lack of employment opportunities. According to Stats SA, the official unemployment rate stands at 32.9%.
The youth of South Africa is once again more interested in the coming elections. These elections belong to you, the youth of South Africa, and the youth of South Africa will determine the outcome of these elections.
Malema further backed Marshal Dlamini as a premier candidate of KwaZulu-Natal, a province the party has been making electoral gains since its inception. Dlamini was redeployed to the province to ensure that the party garners more support for the EFF. In 2019, the party got over 500,000 votes in KZN on both the national and provincial ballot.
Comrades, I bring to you the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Marshal Dlamini, who's ready to take that province and make sure that we lead it with precision. I want to commit here that we will not hire people in the people's government who are politically affiliated only to the EFF.
Meanwhile, young people who attended the rally say the EFF is their party of choice.
I am a young person. I don't have a job. I have a matric, but the ANC is giving the job to their families and they are corrupt and they failed us for the past 30 years. I believe in the EFF and in the CIC that this can rescue the black people from poverty.
They've hosted LGBT pride events and they've also supported us in situations where we've been castrated and judged, and they've always been there to help us. So they are very much supporters of us LGBTQI plus members.
Malema gave his marching orders to party supporters to rally the over 27 million registered voters to go out in their numbers and vote on the 29th of May. For SABC News, I'm Natasha Piri in Polokwane.
You're watching The Week Ahead live from the IEC's Results Operations Centre in Midrand. We will be back right after this. Welcome back to The Week Ahead live from the IEC's Results Operations Centre in Midrand. Now, India's capital, New Delhi, is voting in the country's general election, which is now inching towards its end. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking a rare third term, but opposition parties have accused him of taking an anti-Muslim stance and polarising the country. Voters in Delhi are voting to choose members of parliament from either side. Okay, it seems we can't have that story right now because we're going to take you to Richards Bay. The IFP leader is heading to the podium and we're going to listen to him speaking to his supporters at their final rally.
I want to greet all members of the NEC collectively as they have been introduced in front of us. I also want to greet Inkosi Zuzifa Buthelezi, Inkosi Yesizwe sakwaButhelezi, and the whole family of Wapindangene. I want to greet all Amakosi Asendlunkulu, our friends, leaders of the clergy who are present today. I also want to greet the SABC family that is also present amongst us. I want to convey a message of support from Umanqumalo, who went for tooth extraction on Thursday. Unfortunately, it complicated yesterday and had to be admitted. She is wishing well. Our Siyonqoba campaign is this is the final call we are going to make today to the people of South Africa to stand on the side of the IFP. The prize for which we have all been working is finally in sight. Just few days now, the future of South Africa will be taken from the hands of the few and placed in the hands of the people of South Africa. 27.6 million voters will choose the leaders of a new government bringing a fundamental change to South Africa on the 29th of May. The 29 May elections must be a watershed moment and a turning point to unemployment, crime, load shedding, corruption, and poor service delivery. Since the launch of our manifesto on the 10th of March at Moses Mabhida, the IFP leadership and volunteers have been crisscrossing the country, meeting voters face to face, from village to village, district to district, and province to province. In the transit camps, the conditions under which the majority of the people of South Africa live are very bad, unfortunate, and leave sour taste. Today we are winding up our election campaign as the special votes begin tomorrow. We are here therefore today to declare that the IFP is ready to receive the mandate to lead, to serve, and to govern. The time is now for an alternative government that will bring the meaningful change and save South Africa from being a collapsed state. There is nothing more urgently needed at the present crossroads than a leadership South Africa can trust. Looking back over the past few months, I am proud of the campaign the IFP has waged. We have entered these elections in the spirit of integrity that has always characterized the IFP. We have focused not on the weakness of our opponents, but on the strengths of the IFP. We have provided our manifesto, not merely promises of what we will do, but a track record of what we have already done. We have given South Africa reasons to trust us. We have given you the reasons to partner with the IFP as we together rebuild South Africa. For the past few months, the eyes of the nation has been focused on elections. Everywhere we look, we see campaign posters imploring us to vote for this or that party. The radio and television stations had been filled with debates and analysis, while call-in programs gave voice to many divergent views. of all the campaigns since 1994, this has been the most talked about, visible, and fluid, giving voters an enormous amount of food for thought. The reason that this election campaign has grabbed our attention to such a degree is because we stand on the threshold of a fundamental change of government. The entire leadership of our country is set to change as voters on Wednesday will reject the government that has failed them and elect the leadership they can trust. I want to thank the media for the great job they have done in getting the information to the people of South Africa, both through traditional media and social media. Posters, journalists, and editors have covered every angle of every story, driving an important national debate. I am also grateful to the many NGOs like the Center of Early Childhood Development, as well as the faith-based organizations and professional bodies for organizing debates and inviting political leaders to engage with communities so that our communities can make informed decisions, not to vote by heart. South Africans have engaged this campaign with enthusiasm, getting involved in the debate and making their voices heard. Today, as we reach the end of our formal campaigning, I want to express my deepest gratitude to the thousands of volunteers of the IFP in every province who took up the call to campaign for the IFP. Without you, dear volunteers, the IFP's message could never have reached as deep and as far as it has, bringing hope to a struggling people. Our late founder, Umntwana kaPhindangene, always urged us right from the start to ensure that the structures of the IFP are strong and active, providing a role for every IF member to make their contribution. We see now, in the strength of our branches, the enormous benefit of active, engaged, and involved supporters. This is not a party of a few in high positions. The IFP is truly the part of the people. Throughout this campaign, I have witnessed again and again how effective we are as a cohesive team, each playing our individual parts in one campaign with one goal. I am proud of our youth brigade, of our women's brigade, and all of our leaders who pulled their weight, never resting and never taking their eye off the prize. I am proud in particular of the campaign we have waged throughout, maintaining the high moral ground, even when our opponents began their unusual tricks of slinging and abusing the state resources. I must say a special word of thanks to our team of communication who tirelessly worked to keep our message front and center and to empower people with an understanding of the IFP. South Africans have the IFP message of hope everywhere, even up in the sky, as our banner was raised over cities and towns. They have followed us as we went from community to community. They have listened and watched and shared because the IFP is not just the voice of reason, but the IFP speaks from the heart. I mention all these people because I know how hard we have worked to secure the IFP's success in these elections. We have done this because of what is at stake. We have done it for the South Africa's survival. For 30 years, our people have watched us as South Africa was undermined by those who were entrusted to fulfill the promise of democracy. We have seen our country decline by every measure, becoming poorer, more dangerous, less stable, more debt-ridden, less just, and less respected throughout the world. The treasure we won in 1994 has been damaged and pillaged, not by a foreign enemy or an invading force, but by the people named in the Zondo Commission, people who sold out South Africa for their personal gains, people who are still sitting in high government position, people who are standing for elections again on 29 May. The IFP has worked hard to get our message out because we cannot stand by and watch our country destroyed. We must stand up as an alternative government, a government that South Africa can trust. South Africans have been so engaged in this campaign because they are no longer willing to just shut their eyes and vote. They want to know what they are voting for. That speaks volumes about the maturing of democracy as well as about our people discontent. Sadly, it is that very discontent that has been at the center of this election campaign. Many parties have capitalized on the frustration, fear, and anger of the South Africans, focusing their campaign on the failures and scandals and the arrogance of the ruling party and the terrible crisis it birthed. It is important that we talk about the staggering levels of unemployment and poverty, about the instability of our energy supply, about the deepening grip of criminality, about the breakdown of service delivery, about water shortages, and about price increases and gender-based violence. It is important that we talk about corruption, about institutionalized incompetence and maladministration, and about massive tender fraud. But in the end, we all know the crisis we are facing. We all know the depth of the struggle in South Africa and the daily trauma so many of our people endure. What our country needs to hear is that there is a way out, that there are people who know the way out and are willing to lead the people of South Africa to safety. That is the message the IFP wants to convey today. It is that which sets us apart, because when the IFP speaks, we speak the truth. Over the past 2 months, since we launched our manifesto, the IFP has been actively engaging all South Africans on our solid plan to rebuild South Africa. I and all leaders of the IFP have spoken to countless communities and fielded countless interviews and debates. It has been interesting to see how the IFP's manifesto sparked the imagination of both analysts and voters. For the IFP's commitment to put South Africans first, it has been widely lauded. Our policy of reserving jobs for South Africans has been welcomed as an intervention that is long overdue, for this government has been turning a blind eye to the growing phenomenon of low skills and entry-level jobs being given overwhelmingly to foreign nationals. We understand the hardships that is driving the economic migrants to seek work in South Africa, and we maintain the deepest empathy with our brothers and sisters from across the continent. But South Africa itself is in crisis, and we need to protect our own citizens from hunger, deprivation, and despair before we can think to help anyone else from somewhere in Africa. Another aspect of the IFP's policy that has been widely discussed is our commitment to roll out the unemployed graduate grant of 3,000 rand for a fixed period to enable those already equipped with skill to enter the labor market and grow our economy, finding meaningful work. The IFP has been celebrated for our commitment to place graduates in the 12-month internship in municipalities and provincial and national departments, redirecting some of the billions of rand spent on sitters to ensure that graduates do not sit at home while the economy suffers. When I spoke with young people during our campaign stops, they told me how important it is to them to access basic Wi-Fi and internet services, to do their homework, to become content creators and young media personalities. Many in urban South Africa forget that rural South Africans still do not have cell phone reception and cannot access the internet, let alone to connect to television. These young people are deprived of the opportunity. They cannot just simply send an application for work to government or to businesses online because they do not even have the tools to do so. The IFP will change this, as we have said in our manifesto, that we will push for the 50% reduction in the data cost. It is an indictment on the current administration that we have gone on like this as a country and still have the most expensive data rates in the continent. Among the manifesto of various parties, the IFP manifesto has been recognized by the economists of being practical, feasible, and sound. Unlike those who will bankrupt our country to win the popular vote, the IFP is walking a road that will build South Africa while serving South Africans. We are doing this because we are not in it for power. We are in this to serve. There was then the sudden and entirely predictable halt to load shedding After 17 years of rolling blackout, suddenly the light stayed on for 2 months. And every time when we turn on the radio, another official is claiming that this has nothing to do with election. If it were not so damaging to South Africa, we will surely laugh. But the truth is that our country will be thrust back into darkness immediately after the elections on Wednesday in the beginning of the month of June, which has been temporarily suspended in order to deceive the people of South Africa as if the current government is able to cope with challenges of load shedding. The IFP, if given an opportunity to govern our country, we will end the load shedding completely. We will transform the energy sector in our country, and we will endeavor to reduce the cost of fuel by delinking the RAF levies and other government taxes from the petrol price. It is time that our country moves over through a just energy transition, and let us open the markets for manufacturing and distribution of clean energy products, and let us become the game changers on the continent to do so. The IFP is committed to make, on behalf of our people and in partnership with our people, lasting change that will have a real impact on the lives of our people. Tangible change whereby they can see the difference in communities. I urge you to consider the track record of the IFP against the list of failures of the ruling party that it has produced. Let us not vote with our emotions on the 29th of May. Let us use our brains and vote on the basis of facts. Let us vote on the basis of our current realities. Our country is suffering from unemployment, crime, load shedding, poor service delivery, and corruption. On the 29th of May, therefore, when we go to the polling stations, let us apply our brains and actively remove the government that has compelled us to stay in darkness, that has compelled our women to stay under fear, that has compelled our youth to stay at home with all skills and abilities because there are no job opportunities available under the current government. Again, the government has just recently signed a law, a bill that has been championed for quite a long time, the NHI. The National Health Insurance Act has been signed by the President of our country just before the election, despite there being no plan to fund it. Knowing very well that this act will face constitutional challenges and face a massive backlash, the President immediately, through his department, has declared that the President is willing to listen to the experts he has ignored for quite a long time. The question is, why did the President sign this bill into law on the eve of election, and all of a sudden he is now willing to listen to the experts whom he ignored for quite a long time. The IFP on records believes in the universal health care access by all people of South Africa. The recently signed NHI Act is a failure from the start. It will meet legal challenges and it has no funding plan. The single fund administered by the national government will be exposed to corruption. The IFP believes for a national health insurance to be effectively successful and efficient, the universal health care must be decentralized to provinces so that it can be managed closer to where people are. The problem right now is that time is not abundant supply. We have run out of time to give liars and thieves the space to change their ways. If we do not rid ourselves of corruption leaders on 29 May, South Africa will not survive. Over the last 3 months, politicians have spoken, analysts have spoken, thought leaders in the media have made their say. There has been more said in this campaign than in any that has come before. But the final word will speak the loudest, and the final word belongs to you, people of South Africa, on the 29th of May. On Wednesday morning, polling stations will open across South Africa. Every voter will be asked to vote. The world will be waiting with abated breath to see what happens to this once glorious country that has been devoured by its own leaders. The IFP is calling all the people of South Africa to rise up and change the government of the day by voting the IFP. Your vote for change and the vote for the IFP will be a vote to secure the future of our country. Friends, I can tell you one thing for sure. There are millions amongst us who deeply care about our country, who are calling on leadership of integrity to help rebuild South Africa. These are IFP people, some long-standing time supporters, some new to our families, and some merely lending their vote to the strongest party. They know, as we all do, that the IFP is the hope of South Africa. I and the leadership of the IFP have done all we can to protect the future of our country. It is now in your hands. I call on you to vote on the 29th of May in your numbers. Put your protest in the ballot box by voting the IFP. On all 3 ballot papers, vote for the leaders you can trust. Vote IFP, and vote IFP in all the 3 ballot papers, so that in generations to come, we can look on these as the moment we saved South Africa. We have done this for Shenge because he did it for you. This is the time for the IFP. Baphathi bohlelo, namhlanje sihlangene lapha ukuba sizophothula umkhankaso wethu wokhetho olungomhla ka-29 May 2024. Lolu khetho oluzoqala kusasa luqhubeke nangolwesibili la kuvota khona ababhalise njengama special votes. Ukhetho olukhulu lapho zonke izigidigidi zabavoti baseningizimu neAfrika bezovukela ezikhungweni ukuba beyokhipha uhulumeni owehlulekile, bavotele uhulumeni omusha ozoba namasu nokucabanga okusha okuhulumeni weqembu lenkatha yenkululeko. Umhla ka-29 May usuku oluyingqayizivele ezweni lakithi, usuku lokhetho lomkhumula jezi. NgoLwesithathu mhla ka-29 May bonke abantu baseningizimu neAfrika abasukume badwebe umugqa phansi bethi sekwenele ukuba intsha ihlale emakhaya neziqi ngasebenzi, bethi sekwenele ukuba amaphupho entsha yakithi ashabalale usuku nosuku. Abantu baseningizimu neAfrika ngomhla ka-29 May abasukume bonke bathi sekwenele ukuba bethi bethenge ugesi sebewukhokhele ngemali yabo uphinde uthathwe uhulumeni ngaphansi kohlelo lwe-load shedding esaziyo ukuthi kusukela ngomhla ka-1 June emva kokhetho izobuya i-load shedding. Abasukume bonke abantu besifazane baseningizimu neAfrika bethi sekwenele ukuba abantu besifazane nezingane zethu bahlale ezweni elingaphephile. Abantu baseningizimu neAfrika sebekhombise kaningi ukunganeliseki kwabo, sebebhikishe kaningi bevala imigwaqo ngamatshe beshisa amathayi, kodwa abasizakali ngalutho ezidingweni zabo. Ngomhla ka-29 May usuku olukhulu lokuba abantu baseningizimu neAfrika bathatha umbhikisho wabo baqonde nawo ngqo ezikhungweni zokuvota, bafike babhikishe ngevoti labo ngokukhipha uhulumeni ohlalisa ingane zethu emakhaya, osinikeza i-load shedding, owenza abantu besifazane bengaphephi, imali engabiyenza umehluko empilweni zethu ephelela ezandleni zenkohlakalo. Asambeni sonke ngomhla ka-29 May sithathe umbhikisho wethu siye nawo kuma-ballot box, sifike simkhiphe ngevoti owenza izingane zethu zihlale emakhaya zingasebenzi. Sifike simkhiphe ngevoti osihlalisa ebumnyameni, ugesi sesiwukhokhele. Sifike simkhiphe ngevoti osihlalisa imjondolo nakolindela engasakheli izindlu ezisinika isithunzi ezifaneleyo nokuhlonipheka. Asambe sifike simkhiphe ngevoti lowo okhonjwe umbiko kaZondo Commission ukuthi uyathinteka ezenzweni zenkohlakalo nokusebenzisa budedengu izigidigidi zemali yabantu baseningizimu neAfrika engabe yenze umehluko ezimpilweni zethu. Iqembu lenkatha yenkululeko selikulungele ukuba uhulumeni kulesi sifundazwe saKwaZulu Natali. Ucomrade uThami Ntuli nabo bonke sibaphakamisile ohlwini laKwaZulu Natali, sibathwele ngeqoma ukuba babuyise uguquko, balethe uzinzo nenqubekela phambili kuhulumeni waKwaZulu Natali. ngokufanayo futhi iqembu le-IFP likulungele ukuba ingxenye kahulumeni waseGauteng ezingeni lokuphatha nokuthatha izinqumo ukwenza uguquko ezimpilweni zabantu baseningizimu neAfrika. Bese kuthi kokugcina iqembu lenkatha yenkululeko selikulungele ukuba ingxenye yokuphathwa kahulumeni omkhulu ezweni lakithi ukuze abantu baseningizimu neAfrika bathole uhulumeni ozodala imisebenzi, ozoqeda ubugebengu, aqede inkohlakalo, enza abantu besifazane bahlale ngokuphepha. Amaphuzu ethu ali13 ezethembiso zokhetho ayisu nesixazululo esizodala amathuba omsebenzi. Intsha yakithi izoba seqhulwini ley'nhlelo zethu. Intsha yakithi izothola ukuqeqeshwa ngokwemfundo yezamakhono, vocational education and training. Bonke abantu abayintsha abaneziqu bazothola isibonelelo sika 3,000 rand izinyanga ezili12 ngesikhathi besafuna umsebenzi. Le mali izobalekelela ukuthenga i-airtime, bafake izicelo zomsebenzi, baphinde bahambele inhlolokhono ama-interviews. Esikhathini esingangonyaka akekho umuntu oneziqu oyohlala ekhaya engasebenzi futhi engasitholi isibonelelo sikahulumeni oholwa yi-IFP wesamba semali esu-3,000 rand. Abantu besifazane bazoba seqhulwini lwey'nhlelo zethu zokubeseka sibathuthukise njengezinsika zokuhweba nokuthuthukiswa komnotho. Abantu besifazane bawumgogodla womnotho wendawo, i-local economic development. Noma ngabe liyana, noma ngabe libalele, noma ngabe kumakhaza, abantu besifazane obathola behweba emakethe ukuze ntambama kube khona ukudla emndenini eyehlukeneyo. Ngakho iqembu lenkatha yenkululeko, abantu besifazane bazoba seqhulwini ey'nhlelweni zabo. Simema bonke abantu besifazane eningizimu neAfrika ukuthi usuku lwangolwesithathu umhla ka-29 May abasukume bonke beyovotela i-IFP, ngoba i-IFP abantu besifazane ekuthuthukisweni kwezomnotho, ekuvikelweni kwabo kwezokuphepha bazoba seqhulwini ey'nhlelweni zeqembu lenkatha yenkululeko. I-IFP ayizi kulokhu icima iphinde ikhanyise, kodwa izoyiqeda nya i-load shedding. Sizodala imiphakathi ephephile lapho bonke abantu besifazane nezingane zethu zizophila impilo ephephile, ngoba ubugebengu namasela sizobhekana nawo ngeziqu zoboya. Iqembu le-IFP lizonikezela ngemfundo yeqophelo nengqalasizinda nezinsiza kufundisa ezizokhiqiza intsha enolwazi namakhono athuthukisiwe. Iqembu le-IFP liphikisana nalomnyama ongenafu, i-NHI Act esayinwe umengameli wezwe seliyoshona ngoba eqonde ukudlala ngemizwa yabantu baseningizimu neAfrika. Bonke abantu abanolwazi futhi abaziqondayo izinto bayazi ukuthi lo mthetho we-NHI osanda kusayinwa umengameli ufana negobongo elingenalutho phakathi. I-IFP iyakholelwa kwi-universal healthcare access kubo bonke abantu baseningizimu neAfrika. Uma singanikezwa ithuba ngevoti labantu baseningizimu neAfrika, siyohlinzeka ngezempilo eyiseqophelweni elifanayo kuwo wonke umuntu oyisakhamuzi saseningizimu neAfrika ngokuba sakhe futhi silungise ingqalasizinda ezibhedlela nasemtholampilo ezoba nabahlengikazi nodokotela beqophelo eduze la abantu bakithi behlala khona. Sizoqeqesha siphinde siqashe ongoti abanele, sithenge nemshini eyenele ukwelapha zonke izifo ezixakile ezifana nomdlavuza kunokuba abantu bakithi balinde isikhathi eside ukuba badluliselwe ezibhedlela ezikhulu futhi eziqhelile kunabo. Imboni yamatekisi sizozinika ithuba lokuxoxisana nayo ukubheka izingqinamba zikashanela abaphila nazo nsuku zonke kanye nezimvume zemgwaqo kanye nokuxhaswa kwebhizinisi labo njengoba kuyibhizinisi ikakhulukazi labantu abansundu. Sizoqinisekisa ukuthi ingqalasizinda yemgwaqo nolayini beyitimela iyanakekelwa ukuze ukuthuthwa kwempahla nomphakathi nabasebenzi kukwazi ukufukula umnotho ukuze kudaleke amathuba omsebenzi. Umthetho Ingonyama Trust sizokuvikela ukuba uthuthukiswe futhi ube isibonelo indlela umhlaba ongaphansi kwamakhosi nesilo samabandla ongaphathwa ngayo uthuthukiswe futhi ugcine unikeze ilungelo lobumnikazi emakhosini nezakhamizi ezihlala kuwo. Isakhiwo sobukhosi sizosilwela ukuba umthetho sisekelo ucacise ngokupheleleyo amandla nemisebenzi, roles, functions and responsibilities of amakhosi. Umntwana wakaphinda ngene walwa impilo yakhe yonke elelwa isithunzi nokuhlonishwa kwamakhosi nokucaciswa kwendima ayidlalayo emphakathini yakithi. Umgomo umntwana kwaphinda ngene akade umele. Uma ningasichasa ngevoti lenu amakhosi azoba seqhulwini einhlelweni zethu. Isimo sokuphepha kwamakhosi neinduna kuyoba udaba lokuqala esiyokuhlinzeka ukuba lihlinzekwe ngesabelo mali. Imali yesibonelelo sempesheni yabantu abadala, impesheni yeingane, i-child support grant kanye ne-social relief of distress grant ka-400 rand, ka-350. Le mali i-IFP ithi ncane kakhulu ukuhlangabeza izidingo zabantu bakithi. Ngaphansi kweqembu le-IFP siyonciphisa ongqongqoshe sivale namanye amaphino ngqongqoshe bese kuthi imali ezinkulungwane nezigidi ekade iholwa ngongqongqoshe no deputy minister esizobavala siyoyithatha leyo mali iyokhuphula impesheni yabantu abadala sizoyithatha leyo mali iyokhuphula impesheni ye-child support grant sizoyithatha leyo mali siyokhuphula 350 ngoba mncane kakhulu ukuhola ngabantu bakithi ngesikhathi esifanayo senza lokho siyogcila kakhulu ekudaleni amathuba omsebenzi ukuze siphungule abantu abaphila ngemali yesibonelelo kodwa besebenze ukuze bathole imali engcono eyiholo abalisebenzele ukuze uhulumeni athwale labo abangenawo amandla okuzithwala ngenxa yokugula nangenxa yeminyaka yobudala thatha leli thuba ke ngenza inhlaba mkhosi kubo bonke abangamavolontiya e-IFP kuwonke amalunga eqembu lenkatha yenkululeko nakubo bonke abantu baseningizimu neAfrika asambeni siyoncenca bonke abantu baseningizimu neAfrika ukuthi kusasa nangolwesibili baqonde ezikhungweni laba abawovotela ezikhungweni abawovotela emakhaya bakulungele uma kufika uIEC linye igama ngolwesithathu abantu baseningizimu neAfrika badinga uguquko badinga uhulumeni ozoqhamuka nomqondo omusha ukubhekana nezinkinga zabo iqembu lenkatha yenkululeko likulungele ukuba uhulumeni wabantu baseningizimu neAfrika asambeni sonke siyoqwasha ngeso lokhozi kuma voting station ngoba inkohlakalo kufuneka singayinikeza ngisho elincane ithuba ukuba kukhwabaniswa amavoti ethu sibonile izolo ebusuku la eHammersdale umsindo osuke ngama-ballot papers asisukumeni sonke the volunteers the coordinators leaders of the IFP members of the IFP nawo wonke umphakathi asilivikele ilungelo lethu nevoti lethu singanikwa uhulumeni esingamfuni uhulumeni osuwehlulekile ukuletha uguquko ezimpilweni zethu asiyeni kubo bonke abantu bomakhelwane kuzo zonke indawo emsebenzini etaxi rank sinqenqe wonke umuntu ukuthi ngolwesithathu laba bantu abawu 27.6 million abasukume bayokhetha uhulumeni omusha bakhethe iqembu lenkatha yenkululeko ukuba kube yilo elizoba yizwi labantu baseningizimu neAfrika ngolwesithathu kuzobe kuyiviki lesithathu enyangeni kuusuku lwesithathu evikini kuzo zonke izikhungo kunama-ballot paper amathathu kuwonke ama-ballot paper amathathu kuney'ndlovu ey'ntathu ngakho bonke abantu baseningizimu neAfrika ma befika esikhungweni abafike bethi zaka zaka eduze nendlovu kuwo mathathu amaphepha fikani nesekele lolu khetho esilinikela kumntwana kwaphinda ngene nxusa wonke umuntu votela iqembu lenkatha yenkululeko iqembu le-IFP lehlukile kuwo wonke amanye amaqembu ezombusazwe asisenzi isethembiso esingeke sisifeze isethembiso esisenzayo siumgomo wethu wokuzibophezela kuwe mvoti nesakhamuzi sethembe ngoba sisebenzela wena. We do not make empty promises. Our promise is our commitment to you. You will hold us accountable for the next 5 years, and if we fail to deliver, remove us in 2029. Abahambe abahlulekile ukuletha intuthuko, abahambe. Abaphume abahlalisa ingane zethu emakhaya, abaphume. Abangabuyi abasithathela ugesi, abangabuyi. Abahambe.